Good day, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Hawaii. Today, November 19th, 2021. I hope this finds you well, wherever you may be. Thank you for tuning in to my podcast and my live stream called As I See It, World Dharma Talks. This is part 10 in this series of 11 parts titled The Dharma Life, Recollections, Reflections, Lessons Learning, Lessons Learned, Pitfalls, Deceptions, and the overall adventure of being alive in this great mystery and trying our best to make real on the promise of our yogic, our meditative, our Dhamma, our spiritual lives. And what does that mean to each of us as an experience as intimate as breathing, the vocation of intimate experiential presence. So thank you for tuning in. A few brief announcements before I get into this topic. This series, tomorrow will be my final talk on a daily level. I'm moving more into spontaneity and will only do my live stream and podcast when I feel moved to do that. It may be every day, it may be every other day, every third day. I want to be open. So tomorrow will be and I'm not sure when I will announce it. It'll be very spontaneous. There are hundreds, truly hundreds of other live streams and podcasts on all of my channels, also on my website, alanclements.com or worlddharma.com. And joyously partake. We are also very near to the launch of the World Dharma 2.0 video course. It's in 3 tiers, 36 videos in total, 10 minutes to 20 minute long, beautifully edited by the beloved Gemma McGovern and supported by my allies and friends, Ian and Terry in Italy, and brought forth probably within the week or two, and I will definitely give a few talks about the context of the video course. It's being offered freely on YouTube, and I hope to couple that launch with a bi-monthly, every couple of week Zoom World Dharma Forum gathering for those who want to partake of questions and discussion and have a more interactive sharing of things that are most important to us and that which is connected to the World Dharma video course. I'm very excited by that. I filmed it last year in Bali, and it's taken some time to produce based on various personal issues and the pandemic, but it's coming forward very soon. So thank you for being a part of this sharing, and let me dive into today's topic. Learning to shift from a transformational orientation from overcoming darkness, complexity, struggle, suffering, which inevitably we do, and we do to the best of our ability. But to shift the emphasis of focus, the emotional focus, the psychological, existential focus, the yoga of engaging and the light, how to more intimately evolve and grow and expand with beauty, with the attributes of purity, of goodness, of trust, of luminosity. How can wisdom catalyze more wisdom? And how can wisdom illuminate greater spontaneity and access to the treasured quality of freedom, and how that freedom is felt within one's own biological spiritual body, and how that feeling invigorates more intelligence to expand the light of freedom, not just simply overcome the complexity of suffering. And I've been right in there. I'm an ardent, sort of semi-traditional Buddhist. And the First Noble Truth is what really broke my heart and opened my mind to the workability of this context known in the Buddhist Pali language as samsara. The Buddha's First Noble Truth is so epic, in my humble estimation. Those individuals who understand and feel this first discovery attributed to the Buddha, that not life is suffering, that there are degrees and complexities and dimensions of this very complex Buddhist Pali word, dukkha. Unsatisfactoriness, complexity, from anxiety to the most mild forms of stress to the most epic, unconquerable depressions, to the imagined horror, and those people in oppressed countries know firsthand, being victims of torture, of rape. That level of dukkha, unremitting darkness. And I'm just an individual. I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I'm a journalist, I'm an artist, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher. And why? Why is this being inflicted upon me? This unexplainable depth of mystery and anguish that comes out of nowhere, dukkha, the First Noble Truth of the Buddha teaching. Just not being able to control something. To be embedded in a world in which we must face that on the physics of our embeddedness, the anatomical structure of totality, inbuilt in that anatomical molecular structure is discontinuity, death. Earth will be engulfed by Mother Sun. The dukkha of that perception, and then the dukkha of that reality. We're in a sixth mass extinction. We see suffering on the news. We read it on the newspapers. We see it in our phones. We feel it in our mind. The First Noble Truth of the Buddha's teaching. The overcoming of suffering, dukkha. Just simply that life is inherently impermanent. Nothing can be touched and felt as lasting. All of us, no matter how solid the floor is, it's a beach of sand granules. Every moment of perception, every breath, every whisper, every dream, every birth, every life, every moment, every perception, every photon, every galaxy, every black hole, every parallel universe, every deva, every Brahma, every breath, bird, animal, everything is a sea of particles, of conditions that are anicca and empty of self-control. This dukkha recognition, the First Noble Truth of the Buddha's teaching, is just a miracle that there was a discovery and an expression of that discovery, and moreover, these so-called teachings known as Dhamma. How to decode the progressive dimensions of dukkha and minimize the ideal of complete elimination, the arhat ideal in the Buddhist Theravadan tradition of overcoming dukkha completely. I love that ideal, that there is an ideal of absolute freedom from suffering. Otherwise, it would be, what? A horrible, terrorizing recognition that we're embedded in a circumstance with unending terror, suffering, anguish. And you can see, many of you as yogis know firsthand and first heart the efficacy of mindful presence with concentration and effort sustained as it requires. And you look at consciousness in formation with perception, and you see these truths, these Dhamma truths. I'm going to speak about them today, take my time today. However, getting to a certain point of Dhamma velocity, analogously of breaking free of the gravitational forces of the kilesa, these obscurations, these textures, these dimensions within vijnana of consciousness, these felt realities. Mindfulness has the ability to feel the characteristic, the manifestation, the texture, the taste, the feel of these cetasikas, these obscurations, these dimensions when unrecognized lead to immediate, sustained, and long-term dukkha, self-generated dukkha. And if you've ever been around someone, if you've ever really suffered the horror of trying to extricate consciousness from an addiction, a pharmaceutical addiction, a sexual addiction, a cognitive addiction, nicotine, cigarettes, war, violence, abuse. It takes everything and more to decathect from this deeply embedded toxic bonding between identity and toxic emotion and feeling, and this ever cycle of diminishment that goes on with, the more you do, the more you suffer, but the more you do, the more you want, and you live in that endless cycle known as classic addiction, a self-destructive behavior. And. Right now, there's every reason to despair. The news couldn't get worse, and it gets worse. We all know. There's the reincarnation of Hitler in Austria today. Whatever's gone down with the chancellor, put a high dose of ayahuasca in that man's mouth fast. Purge your unrecognized authoritarian glee. Just wear a mustache and mock yourself. Put up a right arm. You're aberrant, you're wrong. You're creating an untold depth of suffering, especially in the children. And how easy it is to blame and judge, and as it's been said, cliche as it sounds, curse the darkness. However, today, I could not feel more empowered to sanctify, elevate, illuminate, abide within, take refuge, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, take refuge in the light of Dhamma. By oneself alone is one defiled. It's said that the Buddha was said to have said these words, and by oneself alone is one purified, radically interdependent with other, but taking refuge in the fidelity of one's own courage, vision, determination, patience, self-love, self-compassion, mindfulness, concentration, right effort, all the attributes of these dimensions of the Four Noble Truths. Wow. Learning to abide within one's own refuge and learning to grow and expand with the light and the radiance and the luminosity attributed to the experience of an expanding Dhamma presence. Growing from rapture, learning to love in higher radiant expressions or waves of joy. protecting the sanctity of one's own peace and unity and harmony, the fidelity of one's own thought, speech, and action. Learning to disassociate from dissonance inside, noise outside. That timeless art, right? This is the time. It's so easy to give, I would use the word unrecognized, neurotic support for narratives of self-diminishment. What someone isn't doing well enough, how wrong they are. Oh my God, how bleak it is. 10 million ways to reorient a definition and a narrative about how life isn't the way it should be, could be, must be. And there is no end to that. We know that. However, right now, and I've been fortunate enough to be blessed to be in deep friendship over many decades with former political prisoners, primarily in the country of Myanmar, where I've been able to be in dialogue with them over many decades. And many of you know these people, both men and women, some of them alive, some of them dead. Some of them, again, reincarcerated right now, some of them being tortured, some of them not even being disclosed where they are, including the Nobel Peace Laureate, Aung San Suu Kyi. No one knows where she's being imprisoned, except that we keep hearing every now and again pieces of information that she's up for, 102 years for voter fraud and COVID misbehavior. Insanity, right? But I know her well enough, and I know many of her colleagues well enough, that they live in light. They're human, no doubt. But they understand the radiance of taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. They understand that by oneself alone, ultimately one is defiled. In this particular case, they are isolated, they are incarcerated. They only have themselves. Can't even trust the water, the food. Epic. And one could even argue they are in better circumstances than the population, living in forest, running from tree to temporary shelter, being chased by marauding terrorists, beholding to the indoctrination of Ming Online, the Pol Pot of Burma today, the Bin Laden. So, keeping the light alive and radiant. We hear so much today about digital dictatorship and a type of socialistic, communist infused totalitarianism with a big dollar sign or an incorporated sign at the end of that totalitarianism. A very euphemistic form of pseudo-democracy and a type of declaration of human rights without any follow-through with the necessity of embodying the dignity and the conscience of freedom of thought and allowing thought that you cannot control because you understand the beauty of freedom of thought and freedom of expression and freedom of assembly without fear of terrorizing and persecution in a democratic society. You support diversity. And when you don't have control, you don't send the black-booted, automatic weapon-toting FBI on innocent men and women in our country who simply disagree with your mandates, your tyranny, and you've reverted to Maoistic persecution. We're in a strange time, and it's very easy to despair. And so this weaponized medicine, could you say that? And this this at the moment, this vaccine passport, which is really nothing other than digitalized information that doesn't stop with Moderna or Pfizer or any of the other big dark pharma brands, but it's going to connect to our purchasing habits, our search engine questions. Will it connect to our credit card expenses, our travel, our GPS, our location? Will those pieces of digital identity be configured with algorithms that evaluate our obedience to the mandate and to the authority of a digital dictatorship controlled by oligarchs in Silicon Valley and big tech and Wall Street and in Shanghai and Xi Jinping and whoever is in control of the consciousness of America? Yes, there's a lot of talk about socialistic, communist-infused, totalitarian dictatorship today. A mind grab for your mind, my mind, and the control of what we do, think, and behave, and who we relate with, and how we go about the business of living a social and spiritual life in a so-called free society? Will we be victims of a social credit score that controls and manipulates and coerces, terrorizes us? Will our passports and driver's license, renewals of passports and renewal of driver's license, boarding airplanes, trains and buses, getting into taxis, even ordering food, takeaway on Uber, much less going into will that be controlled? It looks like it will be. It's probably well into that form of digital information control. And so when we read about Austria and the lockdown and how Merkel in Germany is in the fourth and potentially the fifth wave of this thing, and this incessant stupidity of knowing that the vaccine will not vaccinate our way out of the pandemic, set aside it being leaky and all the repressed adverse effects from it, from stroke to heart attack to death to blood clots in children and athletes. We've seen the videos, we know the information, and yet they keep saying the only way out of this hell is to kill you and risk no matter what. They won't even say that. I understand the risk. They won't even say that. Listen, I'm a leader. I'm President Joseph Biden. My wife, Dr. Jill, got a booster and she's dead. But I want to go on. No, it's not on the teleprompter. I'm going to say this spontaneously. I have doubts about the vaccine now, but because I am more beholden to Xi Jinping in China and the oligarchs in Wall Street, and I live in the tax-free zone of Delaware, and because I'm a controlled puppet, it's hard to get out, but my wife died, but you must get the 500 boosters. Is that where we're leading? Is that like a bad throwaway joke on Saturday Night Live? Could people be that stupid? And all of a sudden America goes, "Heil, Joe, my sleeves are rolled up. Which one do you want? And then my buttocks is bared for you. Put it in my butt. And if you want to do my anus, it's all yours, Joe." Is that where we're leading, to a dog show of idiocy and craziness? Learning to expand from the light. Okay. The last half of this sharing There's a Buddhist Pali word, anusati. Yeah, that's it. Anusati. It points to conscious reflection, conscious recollection. Calling upon one's own intimate, personal relationship and understanding and experience of the meaning of Dhamma, the transformational intelligences inherent in the fabric of consciousness in life, the verifiable experiential proof of transformational wisdom. Anusati, the reflection upon that experiential verification. We're in it, we're breathing, we're living. It's in our blood, in our arteries, in our brain, our organs in the Dhamma are functioning. Our priority is in transformational awakening, not cursing the darkness, and we're taking refuge in Dhamma. And anusati is pausing at times to reflect upon the process of Dhamma awakening, learning to abide in the radiance of the light of Dhamma, and anusatian, reflecting on that process of light from Dhamma experience. Like a Netflix special in one's own inner being, and one is watching, and one is reflecting upon the watching, and one is directing and acting in the movie of Dhamma radiance. A simultaneity of different functions. Anusati is reflecting, experientially reflecting upon the process of how one can choose to emanate light from their mind, the light of freedom, the light of beauty, the light of purity, the tranquility. Just feel into that word with me, tranquility. I've had political prisoners talk to me about the radiance of tranquility by abiding in the experience of their own dignity in dynamic expansion, even while being tortured. That's what I mean about the light in context of the darkness, but letting the light strengthen the light, illuminate more brightly the light, purify the radiance of the light of Dhamma. Are you making that effort? Are you doing that asana, that yoga asana of anusati? Do you commit yourself to it as vocation, as priority of vocation, each and every hour of our lives? It is not a prayer. It is not a Sunday service at 9. It is not taking your antique Mustang that you've painted and put beautiful hubs on, and it's a beautiful day in LA, and you've taken down the roof, and you're in your convertible, and you're going with your lover to a great restaurant in Malibu, and avoiding the big freeways for fear that you may ding it to put it back in your garage. Anusati and Dhamma is a full-time occupation, not a weekend out. Live in the radiance of our priority, not the habit of unrecognized configurations and narrative of self-denigration, self-diminishment. Meditators and yogis know this. The felt study of the experience of consciousness, the kissing of it, the touching of it, the intimacy of mindfulness upon processes, the psychedelicizing, the sensitizing, where bodies on a yoga mat, consciousness on the yoga mat of presence. Take the consciousness and take the mat away in the purity of cognitive qualities of radiance. We become Deva-like there. Consciousness occupying consciousness within form, yes. But we're feeling form in consciousness. Felt realities, anusati, the felt experiential reality that recollects the qualities and the intelligences of Dhamma, the last third of the talk. 6 qualities, if I'm correct, attributed to the teachings of the Buddha, which are known by the word Dhamma. I like to remove man and masculinity, location and time from so-called sharings or teachings. I'm much more into the intelligences separate from an individual. But I know that's hard to do as human beings. So it becomes a timeless experience, evolving into the evolution of wisdom. 6 qualities attributed to the Buddha. Let me go through them, if I can get them correctly, and then dive into them a little bit and end. Swakato Bhagava Dhammo. Swakato Bhagava Dhammo is a Pali Buddhist phrase that points to intelligences of context, self and other, self and subselves, self and world, self and cosmos, self in dimensionality, selflessness in dimensionality, teachings, intelligences known collectively as Dhamma. Swakato Bhagava Dhammo. Dhamma intelligences shared openly by an awakened mind, Buddha. In other words, intelligences well taught by the Buddha. You hear this all over Buddhist countries. Swakato Bhagava Dhammo Sandihi Ko. Verifiable through direct experience. Sandihi Ko. Verifiable through direct experience, experiential verification. Ehi Kali Ko. Timeless, instantaneous, without hesitation, postponement, or delay. Unconditioned, Ehi Kali Ko. These timeless intelligences, verifiable through direct experience, can be felt and known free of duration, timeless, immediate, no hesitation. Ehi Ko, one of the most beautiful words ever uttered, I think, on the planet, attributed to the Buddha. Ehi Ko, come and see these timeless intelligences for oneself. Remember, these are the 6 recollections embodied in Anusati, which is the teachings of how to experientially not only illuminate the light of Dhamma, goodness, truth, freedom, but how to expand the luminosity. In other words, how to expand with the light and not simply overcoming or challenging the darkness. The flower opens to the light. Clearly, it does not examine the darkness between the petals to expand itself into the radiance or the fragrance of freedom. So ehipasiko, come and see for oneself. Upanaiko, onward leading, even though it's felt and the fruition is in the moment. We breathe on our own. It must be done well by oneself. No one can breathe for each other. All these 6 attributes must be done by oneself. Sandihiko, verifiable by oneself. One must breathe to experience the sandihiko element of the radiance of Dhamma light. Yes, breathing isn't a part-time job. Prayer is a part-time job. Breathing is a full-time vocation. Such that those of you who know, when we breathe well enough and do it well enough, and we really treasure the quality of how we breathe and what we breathe, just like the way we relate and who we relate with, we treasure that. And just like all of us must be in a configuration now where we're living with global warming and pollution. Obviously, the pollution in Shanghai is not local, it's global. Global catastrophic climate collapse through toxins, through plastics, through fossil fuel burning. We're breathing contaminated oxygen. But Dhamma, we're learning to breathe the radiance of generosity, the radiance of freedom, the radiance of compassion. These states are uncontaminated because they're ehikaliko, they're timeless, they're unconditioned. They maintain their purity if only we learn how to experience them. And here is the anusati practice of 6 recollections to help support us illuminating and growing with the light despite the pollutions of the world, mental, physical, religious, existential. We're all, in a way, political prisoners of God. We're all confined by the limits of consciousness. And yet, can we refuse to feel incarcerated by the innateness of being born into these kilesas? Isn't that the Dharma edge? Isn't that the edge of the yogi and the meditator and the Dhamma radical, the existential rebel in each of us that's pushing back? Illuminating the light. Light walkers in the darkness, light walkers into the greater radiance of light. There could be a mind shift by one girl, one boy, somewhere in a unrecognized basement suite in Berlin, playing music on her synthesizer with her headphones on that she saved up her inheritance and bought. And she's playing music that's so celestial, it's so anusati. She's channeling successive Buddha molecules mixed with God molecules and divine feminine instincts being radiated through the sonic atmosphere of totality through her own vulnerable brain and body. And she is making music and she's recording it. And it's this incredible set of chords that no one has ever heard. And all they can say when she plays it on Spotify, that it is nothing short of transformationally enlightened celestial music. It is so beyond rad that all of a sudden it paralyzes the delusion of the collective. And all of a sudden, where there have been these puppets and profiteers and delusional idiots called totalitarian dictators, they pause, they deunify, and they start to dance in the radiance of Dhamma. It could happen. Miracles are real. I do believe in the miracle of Dhamma. All I'm saying here, and I know you know, do not, try not, develop the courage and the instinct to fight hard not to fall into self-diminishing narratives that curse the darkness, that blame, that judge. Decathex, relax, rise up. You are a flower. You are a dream in co-creative expansion. What is your dream? Make that so real that it's the theater of the truth, not the absurd alone. Let us make Dhamma music, Dhamma poetry, Dhamma film. I'm diving in full time, making a film based on this book and everything I've ever thought and dreamt, called Raw War. I'm writing it now. I'm going to go to Bali soon, who knows when. I'm going to go to Vancouver and film it. I pray the forces of the Devas support me in the creation. I'm here writing, I'm working, I'm doing all that I possibly can to make Dhamma light, Dhamma music. Join me in that craft, in that expression. Let us collectively hold hands in the solidarity of Anusati. Let us develop not just a narrative, but a chorus, a song, a hymn around the world, through the cosmos, in all dimensions, a Deva hymn, a Deva song of Dhamma radiance. If not you, who? If not me, if not now, when, right? It's been said. Let's not wait for a Holocaust. So ehipasiko, ehikaliko, sandihiko, swakato Bhagava Dhammo, 5 Upanayiko, onward leading, and the last is Pachacham Vedatabo Vinyuhiti. It must be understood by the individual. It must be realized by oneself. I say call off the search for the teacher, the guru. Read all the books that you want, but write your own. Document the evidence of your own liberation for the unborn. Leave sonic hymns in the soil of time for boys and girls and creatures of new forms to read and hear and feel, just like you were inspired and I were inspired by our diligent overland journey to India. A diligent overland journey to another solar system, another galaxy, another parallel universe. Who is going to go overland through the black hole of eternity to rebirth into a new dimension? And there they see a new Buddha field, a new Jimi Hendrix, a new Bodhisattva, a new awakening, a new trans-Jesus, something more profound than the Bible or the Tipitaka. Can it be said and done? Yes. So part of this Dhamma light is to dream and adventure, and moreover here, as I conclude, actualize, directly inhabit. My teachers, I was blessed with beautiful Kalyanamitas, the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw and his successor, the Venerable Sayadaw Upandita, and a lot of other nuns and monks that beautiful minds that have supported me. Inhabit, take refuge in, learn the fine Dharma art of knowing how to breathe and oxygenate the beauty of Dhamma as we do oxygen to animate our senses. Let the Dhamma animate our senses, our perception, our movements, our asanas, our yoga, our meditation. Live in the sacred experience of an ever-increasing radiance of freedom. Don't seek freedom, be free, and evolve that freedom on the terms of the Dhamma. Use recollection and reflection when needed to inspire the courage to live in greater intelligence to the truth of why we are alive, beyond accumulation, beyond fear, beyond politics, beyond culture, beyond everything, the beyond. We are beings of Dhamma. That proof of God, that proof of Dhamma, make experiential verification the priority of our lives, make good on the promise of inhabiting these timeless qualities. Paint and sing and dance and love and create, make songs and music, sit and walk and work and live and give child a chance to live in the education of the Dhamma heart. Isn't that the priority? Learning to grow and expand with the light. And let the flower bloom. There'll be nights, there'll be days, there'll be rainbows. And let us focus on what nurtures this plant, our being of Dhamma. And let us occupy more and more of our flower opening, despite the rain, the wind, the lightning, the darkness, the struggle, even at times the trampling. Forests will burn, but they regenerate. This Dhamma cannot be taken from the cosmos. It is innate in the fabric of totality. That's why it's timeless. Ehikaliko, the timeless intelligences of beauty. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow will be the 11th and final part of this series, The Dharma Life. And God willing, I'll see you tomorrow at 9:30. Have a beautiful day, and thank you for my heart for being a part of my life.